Good. Awesome. How's lunch?
Very good.
Cool. So a couple housekeeping items before we jump into the presentation. Today we're going to talk a little bit about stress. I'm really excited to be here today. I love coming out to Sunrise. You guys are such a great group. I really had fun at the health and safety fair, so I don't know if you guys remember me. I was dressed up as a pirate, so I might have looked a little bit different. But I was also here in January for the last presentation as well. A couple things that you guys have at your table. So one, you have a handout. A little bit later in the presentation, I'm going to ask you to flip to the next page and do an activity with me. So just know that that's there for you. And then also, I have a lot of goodies. So I have 2 different notebooks and a coloring book that are up here. And anyone who answers questions, asks questions, helps me out up here maybe with some activities. You guys can come grab those freebies afterwards. Awesome. Any questions before we start? Okay. So this is what we're going to review today. We're going to talk about the different types of stress. We're going to go over acute versus chronic stress, so short-term versus long-term. And then how to cope, different skills associated and strategies in order to cope with stress, and then do some practical fun exercises to talk about it as well. Now, why are we really talking about stress? Stress is really cumulative in nature, in that it kind of keeps piling on, and it can really affect you physically, emotionally, and today we're going to talk through some practical, maybe not so practical, stressors that you might have in your life and how to cope with those. Awesome. So, I know you guys are eating. Maybe someone that's done or had already eaten. Can I get one volunteer? It's really easy. Come on up. Whoever wants to. Come on up. It's super easy. You're not doing much. All I want you to do is hold this pitcher of water with one hand, facing the audience. Don't cheat. Not 2 hands. Okay. So, can anyone tell me how much this water weighs? Just shout it out. Shout out the answers. 5 pounds. 10 pounds. How about you, sir? How do you feel? How much do you think it weighs?
How much does it weigh? Oh, maybe a pound.
Okay, a pound. Okay. Any other guesses? So 1 pound, 5 pounds, 10 pounds. Anyone else? 2.5. 2. 60 pounds? 3 pounds. Okay, sir, holding the water pitcher. What do you think it weighs now?
Still about a pound.
Okay. You're supposed to say that.
You're shaking a little.
Okay, so if I were to have you, and you can put it down. Thank you for being an amazing volunteer. Appreciate it. If I were to have asked you to hold that pitcher during my entire presentation for the hour, would you still say it felt like 1 pound?
No.
No.
Maybe
you might
2
say
pounds.
5. You might say 10. 50. So think of that water as stress in your life. You have to hold on to it for an hour a day. It might be easy to cope with, but if you're holding it onto it for an hour a day, a week, a year, your whole life, it's going to feel a lot heavier, and it's going to put a much bigger strain on your day-to-day activities, your relationships, at work, at home, because like I said, stress is very cumulative in nature, and it can kind of keep piling on. So thank you so much. I appreciate your help. So what is stress? So stress is an external, a lot of times temporary, like picking up that picture and putting it back down, cause of physical or mental strain and suffering. Stressful situations are really only stressors if they matter to you. So something that might stress me out might not stress Nicole out. So it depends on the person. A lot of times it's a situation that you can't easily handle, or you can't get in control of that situation. Now, stress can be real or it can be imagined. I missed my deadline at work. That's a stressor. It happened. It was due on Tuesday. It's Wednesday, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I forgot to do it. Or it could be imagined. I walked past my boss in the hallway and they didn't look me in the eyes. Oh, my boss is mad at me because I missed my deadline. What did I do wrong? I'm not a good employee. What's going to happen? And you start to kind of trail off. That might be imaginary stress. Maybe my boss just was, thinking about something else, didn't notice me in the hallway, and it really wasn't something that's worth getting stressed out about. Now, really the biggest differentiation that we're going to be talking about today is, are you taking a stressor in your life and are you making it a crisis? And sometimes it is a crisis and there's no other way you can spin it or really what you can do with it. Or can you take that stressor and make it an opportunity? And we're going to talk about some coping strategies that are going to help shift it, in most cases, from a crisis to an opportunity. Okay, types of stress. First group had some trouble thinking of a list in this category. So there's good stress and there's bad stress. Can someone just start shouting out some examples of good stressors in your life?
Working out.
Exercise. Okay, that's good, like physical stress, working out. What about like something that could happen to you that's a good stressor? It's hard to think about, right? It's easy to think about bad stressors that could happen in your life.
Planning a wedding.
Planning a wedding. I'm getting married in 3 weeks. I know a lot about the stressors of a wedding, good and bad. But yeah, a good one. It's good. I'm excited. I'm getting married. But there's a lot of things to think about. I want it to be perfect. What about getting promoted? Sounds like a pretty good deal, right? Could be stressful though. You'd have more responsibility. Maybe you're managing people now. It's a good stressor because it was a good thing that you got promoted. Anything else? Okay, so okay. So it's a good stressor because they're not now in a safe location. Maybe a little less stressful for you or whoever was, taking care of your folks. What about bad stressors? Usually it's a lot easier to come up with this list, but someone in the last one said moving. That could be a bad stressor or a good stressor.
Finances.
Finances, that's a big one.
Too much work.
Too much work. So work, finances, your health, kids. Okay, so there's good and bad stressors in your life, and we're going to try to figure out how to take those bad stressors and turn them into an opportunity instead of a crisis. Now, has anyone ever heard of fight or flight? Okay, so when you think of fight or flight, what do you think of? Like, what's the situation that you picture in your head? I picture something very specific, but, yep, go ahead.
Okay, so you're in a situation, you either take out the boxing gloves and go to war on it, or you run as fast as you can the other direction.
Okay, so fight or flight, literally, like you're flying away, okay? So, when I think of fight or flight, I think of the example of maybe someone with my stature being able to pick up a car. Because, let's say like my black lab porter was caught underneath. In that moment, that stressor, that event, has caused all these hormones to fly inside my body that I could physically pick up a car. Now, if I just walked out to your parking lot right now and tried to pick up Nicole's car, I definitely would not be able to do that. However, this stressor of me trying to save my dog's life or something else that's happening in my life has caused me to get superhuman strength and pick up that car. Now imagine everything that had to go on inside of my body and in my brain to get me to do that. Imagine now all those things that are happening to you day in and day out. Imagine holding that pitcher of water 24/7 while you're trying to do everything else you're trying to do. Go to work, be a good parent, be a good friend, be a good fiance, whatever it may be. Puts a lot of stress on your life and makes it hard to do your daily activities. So we're going to talk about how to cope with those. A little bit more about the types of stress. We talked about good versus bad. There's also acute, so like short-term versus chronic stress. Can you guys think of some examples of acute or short-term effects of stress? Maybe like physically, what do you feel when you're stressed out? Angry. Physically, what's happening?
Anxiety.
Okay, heart rate, anxiety. Maybe you can't really feel it, but like your blood pressure probably going up, maybe a little bit. Anything else? Cranky. Okay, so maybe your vocabulary might change a little bit when you're stressed.
Yep.
I don't know. I know it does. With me, how about chronic stress? Let's say you're stressed day in and day out. You wake up and you go to bed. What do you think are some signs physically, emotionally of chronically being stressed? Depression? Exhaustion? What about physically?
Gray hairs.
Gray hairs? What about some people gain or lose weight when they're stressed? Some people a lot of times say they get sick from being stressed out, or they're more likely to get sick if they're stressed. So as you can see, there's mental, emotional, social, physical effects of being stressed, and they could be short term, which I think happens to everyone. It's gotta happen to everyone. We're just trying to figure out how to cope with that, but we're trying to prevent that from getting to the chronic stage. Emotional intelligence. Anyone know what this is? There's a definition up there, but anyone heard of it before? Or like, what words do you think of when you think of emotional intelligence? I don't say emotional intelligence because that's what the first group said. That didn't help me much. Empathy. So if you have empathy for others, someone might say you have high emotional intelligence. Anything else? Perfect. Exactly. So when someone has higher emotional intelligence, they're able to more easily cope with stress. So someone with higher emotional intelligence would maybe respond versus react to a situation. Let's say I'm at my desk, I missed a deadline. I get an email from a client or a colleague. I push my papers away, I stomp out of the office, drive home, yell at my fiance. I'm responding to missing that deadline, or I'm reacting to missing that deadline. Instead of responding, instead of saying, okay, I missed my deadline, I had a lot of stuff on my plate this week. Should I prioritize differently? Maybe the expectations were not clear from the beginning of the project. Whatever it may be, having a higher level of emotional intelligence is going to help you to respond versus react to a stressor. So if you guys can turn to the next page of your worksheet, on the right hand side, page 3, that would be. We are actually going to start using these effective coping skills and figure out how we can respond to a stressor instead of react to them. So, in your head, think of a stressful situation that you've been in. You could use my missed a deadline at work example. Someone in the earlier class or earlier session did moving. It's an easy one. And we're going to walk through these 3 different types of coping, and you guys will just kind of write as we review them. So, preventive coping. Preventive coping is really preparing yourself day in and day out to be able to have that high emotional intelligence and prevent yourself from letting that stressor really affect your life to a point where you can't carry out your daily activities. So it's kind of like you're doing it all the time to prepare for an event. So let's say moving, because that's what we talked about earlier. You know you're moving in a month. To prevent you from getting stressed out from your move, you could write a list. Things you need to move. You could start packing early. That would help you prevent you from getting super stressed out during the actual move. Now, immediate coping. What are some in the moment solutions you can do when moving? So imagine me, I'm carrying a big box in my new house. when Doug, my fiance, puts a box in the wrong room. And I start yelling at him. And I'm very stressed out because they're all perfectly labeled and color coded, but for some reason, he still puts them in the wrong room. So instead of throwing the box at him, or however else I might deal with stress in that moment I can put the box down, I could walk away. Immediately, I'd be coping with that. I would be responding in a much more proactive and good way versus throwing the box, getting angry, or yelling. And lastly, restorative coping. So it's already happened in my head. I'm thinking, okay, he's probably gonna put 100 more boxes in the wrong room. How do I think about this stressor differently? Well, it's not really a big deal. In the grand scheme of things, we got this beautiful new house, super excited about it. We're married now, life is good. It's just a box. So take a couple minutes, think of a stressor in your life, and kind of walk through these 3 coping strategies before, during, and after, and then we will talk about someone's example and kind of walk through it. Want to share what their stressor was? You get lots of fun stuff. Okay.
Sure.
Yep.
So, my mom's losing her memory, so she doesn't actually know who I am or anything anymore. So, when the situation arises again, take a breath, breathe. The world is not ending. Just be normal, accept it. Because of what can I do to improve the situation, I treat her as kind of a separate person because I don't want to have an emotional attachment to the situation. And so I kind of just go, well, if this was somebody else, how would I deal with them? If it was somebody else's grandma, how would I treat them? Versus all the back information you have on your own family. It seems to work pretty well. How can I do that situation over? Right.
So, thank you for sharing. I think the first 2 coping skills that you highlighted are very constructive, and I would recommend, I think that you're doing a good job in terms of coping, and it's good to think about, you're going to be probably in a situation a lot with your mom, and day in, day out, or week in and week out. So talk about what you can do beforehand, and then in the moment. And then there's other ways to cope with stress. But again, there's good and bad stressors. There's good and bad ways to cope with stress. So this is kind of, what we're talking about today and what we want to learn about. Anyone else have an example they want to share? Okay, well, if you do go into a stressful situation, this is another thing you can think about. The ABCDs of coping with stress. Now, it's in alphabetical order, pretty easy. You only have to know the first 5 letters of the alphabet, also super simple. But this kind of walks through a stressful event or a stressor, and then how you feel about it, and then how you can dispute or cope with that. So let's say you have a pressing deadline at work, and your beliefs about the event or the way you think about it is, I'm never going to get this project done on time, I'm probably going to get fired. Consequences or your feelings due to your beliefs, you're frustrated, you're anxious, you're disappointed. Now this is where the coping strategies come in. We need to dispute those negative thoughts or feelings, and you can say, and you know, you can say it to yourself in your head, you don't have to say it out loud, really I'm okay. I'm good at my job. I can look at the available resources that are around me. Challenge accepted. And as you can just hear in my voice, I went from being, I'm never get this project done to challenge accepted. Let's do this. And lastly, think about the energy you get, even just the inflection in my voice. I start to feel less tense and more in control. I'm more confident in my ability to move forward. I'm not focused on this happening again. It won't hold me back in the future. So the ABCs of coping with stress, super easy because they're in alphabetical order, and this kind of just walks you through the situation similar to what we just did on the worksheet. Now the fun can begin. So, because you guys have probably memorized this slide and you're so excited to use this in a practical way, I would love 4 volunteers, two teams of 2, you get wellness points for doing it, to come up here and we're going to apply this to a situation. Come on up. We need 2 more folks. Yay, 1 more. Come on, I flew from Denver for you guys. Okay, 2 on each side of the table, please. Awesome. Okay. So, what is in front of you, and I'll use this side as an example. On the left-hand side is going to be the list, the A, B, C, D, E. So they're in alphabetical order, and they're up on the screen, so I would hope that side is pretty easy to kind of put in order. And then you're going to match up an actual example that I did with the A, B, C, D, E. So you're going to figure out what bucket everything on the right falls into. Makes sense? You're kind of matching them up. So maybe something over here is going to say activating event. And on the right-hand side is going to be a stressor. I know talking about stress can be stressful, so how to make it a little bit fun. This stressor is a pirate's stress. I know recently we had the health and safety fair. I was here dressed as a pirate and wanted to make this fun. So, because you guys are well versed in pirates, a pirate is stressed out because someone stole the already stolen treasure. Okay? So that's your activating event. So I already gave you the first 2. Activating event is someone stole your treasure. And those 2 are already on the table. And then you're going to walk through with your partner and figure out what did the pirate, you as a pirate, believe about the event, what were the consequences of the feelings you had, how you're going to dispute it, and the energy you felt from getting your already stolen treasure stolen from you, from another pirate. Okay? Whoever gets it first gets those amazing, coveted headphones and charger set in the little Cigna box. Okay. And then everyone in the audience will help me judge who's the winner, okay?
Okay, hold on.
Ready? Oh, just kidding.
Okay, so I know what this is, so again.
So these are gonna be, I actually wrote out these steps.
Okay.
In a pirate's point of view after they got their
Alright.
treasure stolen. Okay? Ready, set, go. That often gives the opposite effect. I guess we don't need this.
Anymore?
You done? Okay. Let's see. Okay, activating event. Audience, tell me if this is right. Pirate ship is seized and all the treasure you stole gets taken. Sounds like activating. It's a stressor, right? Okay. Beliefs about the event. These get tricky. Let's see, what did you guys put? Okay. So beliefs about the event. It's actually this one. We are never going to be successful pirates if we cannot keep stolen treasure safe, right? So, and then what are the consequences of that? You feel guilty. You're a really bad pirate, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're sad because now you have no treasure. You're jealous of whoever stole the treasure from you. You know that was probably theirs to begin with. You're frustrated because you don't have the treasure anymore that you stole, right? Okay. So how can you dispute it? It was just one treasure. We can always find or steal more, right? Okay. Now, what kind of energy do you get from that? I start to feel more relaxed and even motivated to find/steal the next buried treasure. We will up our parrot security and won't let this happen again. Right? Okay, thanks guys for participating. I'll give you guys, here, you guys each get one of these. Here you go. You can have these as well. And let Cindy know too. Yeah, no, go for it. Thanks for participating, appreciate it. Let Cindy know too, you guys.